All right, welcome into 5R Live here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is Starting 9. I'm here every Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. We have guests from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We also have guests from Around Media. We're going to have Josh Moser on from WSVN today as we talk Dolphins primarily, but also about a player who's not currently with the Dolphins. My voice is a little bit better today, so hopefully this won't be an infuriating experience the way it was for some of you last week, trying to get through all my phlegm. That is God. So we're in good shape today. We are sponsored, as always, at the top by our friends over at U-Brake Wheel Fix. That's ubrakewheelfix.com. This is a wheel refinishing and repair company. They're based in North Miami. You got to reach out to our guy, Mark, down there. The phone number is 305-748-0112. They specialize in refinishing from polishing, machining, and custom colors that will suit your car's needs. Yes, they have the Vice colors. So if you don't like those new Heat jerseys, you sort of reminisce about the Vice, you can get them on your car. They also have Dolphins colors. I've watched them do it down there. They've got over 20 years of experience. Again, they specialize in complete wheel repair. These wheels that get wrecked on the roads of South Florida, they can take care of it for you. They'll take care of it from curb rash, bends, and cracks. So go to U-Brake Wheel Fix. That's ubrakewheelfix.com. Again, the phone number is 305-748-0112. Mark and a lot of them down there, they're a big Miami sports fan, so you can talk Dolphins, Heat, and everything else with them while you're down there. Also, make sure you check out the Instagram page. They have most of their designs up there. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to be joined today by Josh Moser. He'll join us in about 10 minutes. We're going to talk about Deshaun Watson today, and we're not going to talk about his court case because those are allegations, and we don't know how that's going to play out. I'm not as interested kind of in some of the conversation that's been had about, Tua and Watson and all that. Today, I'm more interested in the way that this thing is being covered. And it's not my policy to criticize other people's reporting because I know how hard reporting is, particularly when you're trying to report on a story that's murky, when the teams don't communicate with you publicly, when you have information that advances a story, but you're not sure whether to go with it because you need a second source, a third source, a fourth source. You don't know if an agent is lying to you. You don't know if another general manager is lying to you. You don't know if a scout is lying to you because everybody in this game has agendas. Everything is a leverage play. And a lot of these leverage plays play out publicly. And they play out publicly because reporters are used to do the bidding of agents, team executives, players, scouts, and others who have some skin in the game. They want a certain outcome from a transaction. They want their player to be on a certain team, or they want to have to give up the least possible in a trade, right? So everybody is playing games, and it's very hard to kind of get to the bottom of what is real information and what is not. I do this with the Heat. I used to do it with the Dolphins. I will say I'm not really involved in Dolphins reporting anymore. I was for years. I'm not now. I still have some contacts there. I still can make an occasional phone call, but here's the difference between the Heat and the Dolphins, okay? The Heat's been the same damn people for 25 years. They know me. I know them. I know where to go. If there's something that's important that I'm hearing about from various other sources outside the organization, and I want to make sure it's right, or at least I'm being steered the right way, I can reach out to somebody inside that building that I think may have a vested interest in assisting me. They may want the right story out instead of the wrong story. And I also know that I can trust them not to lead me astray just because it suits their purposes. I don't really have that in the Dolphins organization anymore. I had it for years. Yes, smiling faces with hidden agendas, David. So I don't really have that in the Dolphins organization. So for me, I'm more of an outsider in the Dolphins deal, okay? I'm counting on our reporters in the network or other reporters locally or reporters nationally trying to sift through their information and figure out, again, what is real and what's not. And again, who has an agenda and who doesn't. Now, I will start here, okay? Again, I'm not going to criticize anybody's reporting specifically because I don't know what they know. And it's not my place to decide Charles Robinson is a good reporter on this, but not on this. I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm also not going to go too deeply into criticizing the Dolphins, although I will say this, they're not helping themselves. There are better ways to handle this story than the way they've handled it. And here's the example I'll provide from a Heat perspective. When the James Harden situation was playing out, okay, we had reporting first. And when I say we, I actually mean Adam Barai in our network. He was the first in the country. And I know because I follow all this and I have a lot of friends in national media. He was the first in the country to report what was really going on with Harden in Houston. The first in the country. Look it up. Okay. And so we started to get some of that information out about Harden. Now, the Heat stuff kind of followed that because Adam reported that the Heat were one of the teams that Harden might be interested in playing for. He was the first to report that. Not Shams, not Woj, not my good friend Sam Amick or Howard Beck, Adam. Okay? So he reports all that stuff. And so we continue to follow that story from that perspective. We didn't say Harden was going to the Heat. We basically said the Heat were in the game on Harden. Okay? Now, you may recall about 4 or 5 days before the regular season started, that a bunch of local Heat reporters all tweeted at the same time that the Heat were out of the game for James Harden. They were not pursuing James Harden. Now, we were not included in that. Sometimes I've been included on those texts. I was not. Well, why do you think that was? Because we were the ones reporting that they were in on it. Okay? So the Heat made a tactical decision, and some of the reporters have come clean on this since. I said it at the time, but they made. If you read Barry's Twitter feed from yesterday, that the Heat basically leaked this. Okay, and I don't blame them. I knew we were being thrown under the bus by the Heat. Okay, it happens. It's happened to me before over 25 years. You get up the next day and you report the next story. But I also knew we were right about them looking into the Harden situation because they did. But these negotiations are always fluid. And basically, they didn't have what Houston wanted. Houston wanted picks and pick swaps. The Heat didn't have them. So the conversations didn't really go anywhere, but they happened. And see, that's the problem. Again, I'm not going to criticize a specific reporter, but that's the problem with some of the reporting here on the Watson story, particularly nationally. There's no context on when it's happened. Again, Charles Robinson came out yesterday. There was, and again, he defended it on Twitter. I know Charles, okay? He defended on Twitter afterwards, but he came out basically and it sort of suggested that the conversations may have happened a long time ago. These conversations happen all the time. Again, they're fluid. When you say like you're shopping a player, no, like I can tell you, like with the Heat, like Andy Ellisberg, the GM of the Heat, talks to other GMs all the time about all kinds of players. It doesn't necessarily mean something is imminent. So to get back to the Heat and the Dolphins and the way that this has been played, the Heat, the week before the season, again, like a few days before, came out and said, we're not in on James Harden. Now, why do you think they did that? Well, because they had young players on their roster who were being thrown into the trade machine all over the place. You don't want Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson going into the season thinking they're going to be traded on the second day, right? So they made a tactical decision as an organization to get to some team, cooperative, I'm not going to say friendly, but team cooperative beat guys to get the word out there that they were not in on James Harden at that point. And again, I tweeted out, Eric Cartman being thrown under a bus. Because we were. Okay. But that's what the Heat had to do. Here's my question. Why haven't the Dolphins done that? Like Brian Flores doesn't need to say publicly, okay, to the media, we're not in on Deshaun Watson. He doesn't want to talk about somebody else's player. That's his policy. That's fine. He doesn't have to do it. Right? I mean, it's not necessary for him to do it. It can be done through back channels. It can be done to, again, team cooperative beat guys. It can be done to team cooperative national guys who used to be beat guys. I can think of 2 off the top of my head that I would go to right now. Get a positive story written about Tua. Right now, top of my head. You guys can probably think of who they are. They're both excellent reporters. And they used to be with the team. They used to cover the team. So I think that the Dolphins have mishandled this. And I think one of the problems for the Dolphins is, and the Heat sometimes have this problem too, they like a one-voice philosophy, okay? With the Heat, the voice was always Riley, right? But when Riley left the scene in 2008, he made Spoelstra the voice. Eric struggled with it a little bit at first, okay? But he grew into it. You know that Eric is speaking for the organization, even if everybody doesn't necessarily agree behind the scenes. When Eric speaks, that is the Heat's position on something. Well, the Dolphins have tried to do the same thing with Brian Flores, okay? But here's the problem with it. And this is why I think Chris Greer needs to be the one addressing these things. Brian Flores is trying to manage a team right now that is getting down to 53 players with cuts and all the rest of this stuff, okay? I mean, this thing about Deshaun Watson is not Brian Flores' area. I mean, he may have input, of course, behind the scenes. He's the head coach. But this is a Chris Greer thing. And here's the thing. Steve Ross doesn't speak to the media anymore, with good reason, because he tends to say something that blows up into the headlines and is not what he meant to say. But I think Greer needs to speak to the media more publicly. Or they need to work back channels to get it out there what is actually going on. Because right now, what's happened is complete confusion, okay? You've got Dolphins Twitter, which matters, by the way. Social media matters these days, as much as the mainstream press does. You got Dolphins Twitter attacking Charles Robinson, but the reality is the local guys aren't really letting it go either. You know, Barry has had strong reporting from the Herald about the Dolphins' interest in Watson. So this situation festers and lingers. And what happens now is you're going into the season. You've got a young quarterback who did everything right this offseason, acclimated to a new system, got his body into the right shape, took more of a leadership role. You want to give him in the range. You want to give him the best possibility to see what he can be, right? And now you got this cloud. And maybe the cloud's not their fault. Maybe the cloud is national media guys stirring things up, but they're not helping it. They're not helping it. It's just there. And it's going to last until the start of the season. Look, if Deshaun Watson's not on a roster other than the Texans, okay, and what are the Texans going to say? Of course they're keeping him to start the season. Of course they're going to say they're going to pay him. I mean, they're not going to lose their total leverage position. If he's on their roster to start the year, you don't think that the Sunday NFL shows are going to be all about Deshaun Watson and where he might go? You don't think that's going to be one of the 2 or 3 top lead stories? And yes, this does affect players. You can't tell me when you look at Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson this season that they were not affected by trade rumors. As soon as the trade deadline passed in February, Tyler Hero went on a tear, as did Duncan Robinson. They both shot like 43% from 3 for a month. It does affect players. And so, yeah, you could address it behind the scenes. That's fine. But we also saw last year that some of the stuff was really not addressed behind the scenes. Ryan Fitzpatrick seemed to think he was going to be the Dolphins quarterback for the next 2 decades, even when the rest of the world knew that wasn't the case. So I don't know if it's being addressed behind the scenes because that situation wasn't. So you can address it there, and you should, but you've got to address it in some way that gets into the public sphere. It does not mean that Brian Flores has to say, we are not interested in Deshaun Watson. No. But it does mean that they've got to do some work behind the scenes to get it out there, what exactly it is that they're doing. You don't have to give away the ghost. You don't have to say, well, we'll give up this pick or that pick or whatever. Yes, it did affect Kendrick Nunn also. Absolutely, Alex. But you got to make this stop. This is going to be a daily drum beat until the season starts. As long as Deshaun Watson's situation is still up in the air. And look, I'm not going to get into the allegations and all of that stuff, okay, or what the league is going to do about it or whether they should do it or they shouldn't do it. This is strictly about the Dolphins and how they can best handle this. And I'm not sure there's a great way to handle it, but I don't think the way it's been handled so far is productive. They got to get it out there, like the Heat did. Because at least you went into the season and everybody was like, okay. And you know what happened? We got blamed at 5 reasons. It's like, well, they made up the wholehearted thing to begin with. We didn't. Okay. But we understood why the Heat did what they did. So that's my starting 9 today. We're going to have Josh Moser on here in a second. We're going to talk more about this because he had Drew Rosenhaus on with him. Of course, super agent. He's on with him on Channel 7 and has been for years. Used to be on with Steve Shapiro and Mike DePasquale and others there. He's on with Josh now quite a bit on Sunday night. So we're going to talk to him about this and what Drew revealed and kind of what that means. Because, again, Drew is a source, by the way. I mean, he may not know everything like he used to, but he's plugged into the Dolphin organization. I mean, it's not like when he had 20 guys on the roster, but he still has ties there. He still has tentacles there. He still knows what's going on. And so when he speaks, it does matter. We're going to talk to Josh sort of about how that came about. But we also want to tell you about another great sponsor of this program, but also the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That's our friends over at BetUS. You got to go to betus.com. You got to use that code 5, F-I-V-E. That's going to get you 125%, 125% bonus over at betus.com. Again, this is America's favorite sportsbook. This is a very, very reliable sportsbook, okay? They've got a great platform, but also you're going to get your money when you win. They don't have a huge rollover when you do the bonus. Some of these sports books, you got to roll over till the end of time. They don't. So go to betus.com, use the code 5. Also follow us at 5 Reasons to Bet with my guy Jim Rodriguez. Jim and I giving out picks 3 times a week. We'll be doing more of that as the NFL season continues. But betus.com, this is our new partner over at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I just actually threw some money down yesterday on something, so we'll see how that goes. But you can bet the futures, you can bet live, you can bet pretty much just about anything, parlays. They have it all there on the platform. Again, use the code 5. All right, I think we're going to be joined here by Josh here relatively soon. One other thing I did want to get into before Josh joins, though, is today is cuts day for the Dolphins. Well, it sort of started yesterday, but I mean, they're continuing. And the one point I want to make, and I'll get into this with Josh too, is I know people are freaked out about McKinney getting cut and Skura getting cut. I don't understand why fans care where a player came from. As long as the compensation was not great, the fact that an undrafted guy or somebody else that the Dolphins tried to develop a couple of years ago is outperforming somebody that they may have invested a little bit more in this time doesn't bother me. It means that they developed that player. GM's only going to be judged on how the team performs. That's it overall. One cut here, one cut there. I think we make too much of it. All right, we're going to be joined by our guy, Dad, Josh Moser. Sometimes I join him at his studio down in North Miami, Channel 7. The Mose knows. You can follow him on Twitter. Look at that. You still look better than me, even in the morning. All right, we appreciate you doing this.
No, not at all.
I want people, because if they've just gotten familiar with you over the last year or so, give a little bit of your background.
Sure. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and have now made it over to Miami. But I've been on the local news side covering sports for 15 years, pretty much. I started in Grand Junction, Colorado. From there, I jumped to Denver, then did some work for a couple regional networks out in Denver, and was there when Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl in 2016. Then I jumped from there to Green Bay, and I had been in Green Bay for the past 6 seasons covering the Packers. Hosted a statewide show with Donald Driver, Devontae Adams, called Inside the Huddle. And then very fortunate enough to take over for Steve Shapiro, who had a great career here and then retired, and passed the baton to me over at Channel 7 this past January. So met Ethan, and here we are talking sports in South Florida, and so far so good.
Yeah, I'm not sure Shapiro retired. I think he basically just bar hops on Las Olas at this point. But that's I don't know.
He's not coming into the building anymore, but
right.
Well-deserved bar hop.
Yeah, it's just serious. My daughter and I can't go down on Las Olas without running into Steve. But that's how that works. We're going to talk about your interview with Drew and some other things, but I want to start here because again, you came from a couple of places that are football crazy in Denver and Green Bay. I'm just curious, for now that you've got a taste of Dolphin fans, where it's different. I mean, the Super Bowls are not as recent here as they are in those two places. So there's a certain neurosis with Dolphin fans, I think, that exists from covering so many years of frustration and disappointment. And now you're seeing what's happening with the Tua Watson situation. I'm just curious for your sort of unvarnished thoughts on Dolphin fans so far.
Well, I mean, it's funny you bring up like Skura and hear a couple plays, Bernard McKinney. I feel like walking on the street. I apologize for saying this. I don't know if a random person in Miami could name anyone on the team outside of Tua that's not a Dolphins fan. Now you get to a Dolphins fan, maybe you get 5-6 players max. Green Bay, I mean, they're like roster deep, like where the guy went to college, like, and we're talking like the third backup, like center. And I mean, granted, that's the entire town, and they put so much emphasis into it. I've only been down here with COVID, so I'm curious to see what the Hard Rock actually looks like. But just talking in the streets, we'll see what happens. They won 10 games last year. Probably a lot of people couldn't tell us that. But I think correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan, it's no playoff win since like 03. So,
no, it's long. No. I'll correct you. It's longer. It's 2000, December 30th, 2000, when Lamar Smith. We're now more than 20 years. Lamar Smith rushed for 209 yards, and the offensive coordinator was Chad Gailey. So that's the last with Jay Fiedler. That's the last playoff win. They've been to the playoffs since I guess it would be 08 and 16. And then there was 1 year during I think 2001. I remember the year Chris Chambers was hurt. They managed 3 points. That's it. There have not been a whole lot of playoff touchdowns in the past 20 years either. So again, it's different than Green Bay or Denver.
Right. But I mean, here I feel like personally, like Green Bay, the town shuts down, or the entire state of Wisconsin shuts down to watch Aaron Rodgers play. And then here I feel like people are more concerned about they've got a hangover from Saturday night, or they're out on a boat on Sunday. And that's more of the culture. But we'll see what happens. I think there is a reason to get excited about this Dolphins team. I think this is probably the best team they've had since they made the playoffs in 16. I hope that they're better than 10 wins. But obviously, if you start talking Deshaun Watson versus Tua, and we're a week out, that has some hype for fans. Even though I personally, don't know if this is going to happen, at least in the next 10 days. But just a different type of fan. I think it's just a different type of city. Huge dichotomy between the cities of Green Bay and Miami. I don't think you could pick two cities that are more different. But I'm excited to get to know that the fan base. There is that, fan base that is very to the core, and I'm hoping that we can bring some more people in, so it's not like a Heat playoff run, and then you get all the bandwagon fans. It's got to be from week one, and we'll see what happens. But definitely a different type of fandom, and the weather doesn't help the fans. Green Bay, everything shuts down because it's 20 degrees outside. So a few more activities and entertainment choices than in both of those other cities.
I think there's an Applebee's near the stadium up there. I've been up there a few times. But but let's get into your interview for Sunday with Drew, because Drew's been coming on Channel 7 for quite a long time, and he's over the years. I mean, I covered Drew since I started covering the Dolphins in '97. And we've had our ups and downs. It's different when you're covering him as an agent. There was a time where Drew was the gatekeeper on all Dolphins information for years. He had so many Dolphin players, sometimes 3 at the same position, which I always felt created some conflicts. But like he had 15, 16, 17 Dolphin players who were just waiting for Dolphin guys who were drafted to end up switching to Drew in their second season. And so if you didn't have a relationship with Drew, you could not cover the team. I mean, that's pretty much how it went, because he knew everything before it was going to happen. He's not as involved there anymore, obviously. But he still knows people, and he still knows, the league, obviously. Go through that segment on Sunday, because I think that segment, and when you tweeted out, brought it home for a lot of Dolphin fans that this was more than just a bunch of national guys like Benjamin Albright or Charles Robinson sort of creating trouble, or sort of the Herald guys suggesting something was up, but it was Drew saying something was likely going to happen, right? And this is an agent who talks to teams all around the league. So go through that if you can.
Yeah, I just wanted to know his insight based off of he's very familiar with the market, and he said that he believes that more than likely Watson's going to be the quarterback week 1 for the Miami Dolphins. And I also asked him in the interview, I had heard that the Dolphins were wanting to trade for Watson with the first round pick, Tua, and possibly 2 other picks prior to the NFL draft of this season, before they traded the 3rd overall pick away. And Drew said they've been working on this for a very, very long time. So I know before all of the legal stuff happened with Watson, the 22 situations that he's potentially or alleged to be involved with, that they were ready to move on from Tua right away. And that really started in January, as soon as the season ended, even though he was 6-3 as a starter, and they just wanted Watson. You get a franchise quarterback, he immediately changes your team. So Drew basically said that if they can somehow get a caveat of a safety net of these legal issues with Watson, that they're willing to move on from Tua right away. And as of right now, we don't know if the Texans are going to get it, but they want 3 number 1 picks and 2 number 2, so 5 total picks. Do they keep Tua and they just trade away, mortgage the entire future of their draft classes? Not sure. But that's where Drew stands. What's interesting is both of those players, Deshaun Watson and Tua Tagovailoa, are represented by Athletes First in Southern California. I have a friend that represents them, and they basically said, they went the other way and said that they think Tua is going to stay for now because the legal situation, nothing's going to happen until Deshaun's legal situation gets figured out. And then the other kind of piece to this is the 4 p.m. deadline, because if the Texans don't put Deshaun Watson on that roster, anybody can grab him and he walks out the building for free. Then there's a possibility they could pay him $10 million and just to sit him. And, we talk in the media about the PR nightmare of all of this. You have what this looks like if these alleged sexual assault cases are true, or they be found out to be true. Well, the repercussions of allowing someone in your building, that has done this to people. So that's really where the situation stems right now. I'd be curious to see if something gets done before this 4 p.m. deadline. I don't think that it will personally.
No,
but,
I don't.
Man, as Drew said, you'd have a franchise quarterback for the first time since Dan Marino, completely changes the team, turns this team into a Super Bowl contender. And no, not a knock on Tua. It's second year, really his first year as
but Josh, isn't that the problem? See, that's the thing. You hit on it there, and we'll talk about it more after the break. But like the whole idea of it not being a knock on Tua, I don't see how, if you're in the building and you're trying to lead a franchise, right? Like quarterback is not like nickel corner, okay, or or sort of third linebacker, outside linebacker. You're the face, like you're the guy that everybody's looking to, and you've got this stuff out there. It can't not be a knock on you. You see what I'm getting at? And that's why, you're a media guy. How would you, if you were the Dolphins, this is what I was getting into my first 15 minutes. We know that teams don't have to say things publicly to make stories go away. Okay. They could use certain reporters that are friendly to them. They could get a positive story written out about Tua to make it clear. Brian Flores has done it before, by the way. He went to Cameron Wolfe on something last year. Okay. When there was stuff circulating on why. Is there something else the Dolphins? You're on the other side of this, obviously, but you deal with organizations all the time. You dealt with the Packers. You dealt with the Broncos. How would they handle this?
Not like this. I think Flo is very coach talky. I have a very limited relationship. It's really my first season covering him, and he's, you can tell when he speaks that he's very mediatized. He's like, I just want to care about the guys on my team, and he basically omitted the question, as opposed to saying we are not interested in Deshaun Watson. And I think that's the sticking point. He said all the right things all offseason. Tua's the guy. Tua stayed here in South Florida, worked out at Perform Fort Lauderdale area, has had receivers here, tried to work on that timing, and you can see him much, much better in training camp than if you were looking at the tape from his regular season games, where he's more comfortable, the ball's getting out quicker, his footwork is better. So you have seen that improvement. Obviously, the hip would be better, more time removed from that major injury, but he's 6-3 as a starter, and then you have a franchise quarterback that's, basically a second tier below Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. You put Deshaun Watson, right there above a Matthew Stafford, above a Dak Prescott that just got paid all of that money. He's a top 5 quarterback in the league, you could argue, when he's healthy and, omitting all of the legal issues, and that just changes a franchise. But Tua, to go through all of this, I don't know what the Dolphins are telling him individually behind the scenes, but man, it'd be pretty hard to walk into that building if you full on know that all offseason they've been blowing smoke more or less to try to get Deshaun Watson. And if they can't get him, you're the backup option. But again, that's kind of the business of the NFL, but that'd be a very truculent situation to walk into. And I'd be tough, but he's got a contract. And like some of us do in the media, it's like, hey, you're contracted. You got to go put on a smile and go perform. But that would be very hard. I want to see how this plays out. Honestly, this is just my personal opinion. I don't have any connects with Deshaun Watson like Drew does, other than just speaking to his agent. I think that he stays in Houston until this legal situation is figured out. There's possibly 2 years of appeals. They're talking about going to the court process starting in February.
Right.
So this thing could get drawn out. And I don't know what Roger Goodell's going to do. I don't know if he's going to be put on that exempt list. There's a lot of variables to risk, let alone his contract, which is huge, Deshaun Watson's. And you've got 2 on his rookie deal for 3 more years. So salary cap, all of that. There's a lot in play here.
To me, it's not a risk worth taking, but that's, I mean, that beyond the morality of it is just not a risk worth taking. Truculent, by the way, is the best word that will ever be used on this program by anybody. I got one more question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot before we do. I want to tell people about Underdog Fantasy. That's another of our sponsors here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can draft a season-long best ball team, and that's it. You don't got to deal with in-season management, waivers, all that sort of stuff. If you're lazy, this is absolutely for you. Okay, $25 on sign up if you use the promo code 5RSN, and we're gonna have a live draft here. We're gonna bring on some of our people who don't know anything about football. We're gonna do a live draft here on Wednesday night here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Use that promo code 5RSN. I just did it. I signed up. They sent me $25. It was really, really easy.
Nice.
So check it out. Underdogfantasy.com. All right, I got one question. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. You haven't been here long enough to be kind of swayed either way by those who argue if this is a football town or a basketball town. Obviously, in Green Bay, it was a football town. We know that. In Denver, football town, right? Yeah. I mean, I know that others, sometimes the Rockies and the Nuggets, etc., but it's football. So far, you're here since January. In your view, right now, not in 1972, in 2021, is this a football town or a basketball town?
Basketball town, 100%. And I know that in our talks, I mean, you're very close to the Heat. People jump on in the playoffs. But I think when you really look at the age of the fans, you know, so pretty much anybody that was born, 1980s and later, so we'll call it 40 and under, they haven't really seen a winning football team. And then you got the kids in 2000 that grew up with the big three. And shoot, I remember Tim Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning. I mean, they have some really, really good teams. So you gravitate towards the winners. And that's why I think it's a football town, or excuse me, a basketball town and not a football town. I'm trying to think of, the Dolphins players stand out and actually with fantasy football growing, you remember all the offensive players, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat Shaq, Chris Bosh. Dwayne Wade is really the city. He's, your key guy. And then Pat Riley's been here forever, the Godfather. And yeah, Heat, without question.
You just want me to come back for Heat segments. All right. Follow him at the Mose Knows on Twitter. He's Josh Moser. You can find him on Channel 7 and on Sunday nights on Sports Extra. Josh, appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, anything you need. Ethan, you're the best.
Thanks, man. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to have my guy Joe Goodman on. We'll probably end up telling a whole bunch of Heat stories because that's who I covered the Big Three with on the road. But also he wrote a new book about the 2020 Alabama season, which I'm going to get my hands on. It's actually coming out in November. But we're going to talk about it. Of course, Bama plays Miami this week. So we're going to have a ton of coverage. I know our guys from the Sixth Ring are going live on Wednesday to talk about Bama, Miami. And again, I'll have Joe on tomorrow to talk about Saban, Alabama, Miami, obviously very familiar with this market. Thanks for joining. Thanks to our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy, also BetUS and UBreak, wheelfix.com. Thanks to Josh as well. Back tomorrow at 9 a.m.